Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting, action-packed episode of the Cinemondo podcast with your
Hell yes.
hosts, Kathy and Mark and me.
You know,
We're going to endure and survive.
yes,
We are.
Yes, we
That's
are.
right.
And that was the title of episode 5 of this extremely popular HBO series, The Last of Us. That stars Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey and a bunch of other really good actors. And what's really just a great post-apocalyptic drama based on the 2013 video game.
Yep.
And it's kind of tough to pull, we've had a lot of video game sort of, interpretations, but this one really focuses on characters as well as sort of the world that they're in and the dangers and, the infected and all that kind of stuff. So it's just a really great series created by Craig Mazin, who did Chernobyl, which I thought was just dark.
See,
and
smart
intense.
people in charge.
Yeah, and Neil Druckmann. Yeah. So it's an HBO hit. They always have these on mostly Sunday night. They start them. This particular episode 5 was done on a Thursday night or Friday night, I guess, because of the Super Bowl for this weekend. I'm guessing that's the
smart.
reason they did it.
Yeah.
Very smart, and that's ballsy to change tune in, because when you're switching your shows around, you can sometimes screw people up, and they, because people were planning for a certain day, so it probably paid off for them. But I was amazed that they decided to take that chance, but it was really smart. And I appreciate them because, not that I'm going to be watching the Super Bowl, but it was nice of them not to bury the show by airing it on the Super Bowl, because a lot of fans might have missed it. But I have to say, like, part of why, yes, exactly, why I loved this, why I'm loving the show, and why it's still one of my favorite games, is that it was emotional. Like, you were in the game, it felt like you were an active participant in a really well-written movie. So you have these two characters you really care about. They're well-rounded. You play both characters. You switch back and forth, depending on where you are in the narrative. You have the strong narrative. Your relationship is developing. You really care about these characters. So that's something unusual for most video games. You don't give a shit about the character. You're just you're a faceless, sometimes behind a gun, shooting things. So I'm not that shocked that the show is that good, because that was one of the reasons that made the game a legend. I mean, the game is still popular, still selling, and part 2 is the same. So this is why, if you bring characters you care about and you create real stakes, you cannot count on any of these characters living. And it's, this last episode is a perfect example. Like, it's like you can't go into like Walking Dead. No, most of these people are going to be okay. I mean, granted, Walking Dead also did. I compare it to it because they're kind of similar in a way, because that popularity of kind of apocalyptic, post, zombie-esque genre has that sort of like, the main character is probably gonna be fine. They kill off the characters you hate because that's what they deserve. But very rarely, and once in a while, Walking Dead did that. They did that great scene with Carol's daughter. That was probably the coolest thing in the show, where she becomes a zombie and they have to kill her. So they have that going on in the show too. Like you can't rely on even big actors surviving the show, and that's huge because now you're always a little nervous. Anything's happening, you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
And just one thing I want to say is that we're talking about this, assuming that, like everybody else in the world, you have seen it. So this whole episode from here on is a Cinemondo spoiler zone, brought to you by Cinemondo Spoiler Zone
Incorporated.
It's funny. I was talking about this with some people, and we were all like, oh, did you see Last of Us? And then some other people were like, no, don't spoil it. I haven't seen it yet. And we're like, oh, well, how far are you? It's like, well, I haven't started watching it. I'm like, I'm sorry, but you are going to shut down our discussion, and you're not even watching the show a month later. I just feel like your pleas of don't spoil it run out after a week the show's been on the next episode. Is on.
I feel like people get into the feeling of wanting to watch a bunch all at once, and so you're kind of I do this. I wait.
On you.
My rule is one episode behind. So if you have if right now if you watched 4 episodes, I'm cool with that. Like, I'm not going to talk about the 5th episode. But if it's 2 or more, I'm sorry. You're 2 weeks behind. And
I just feel like your risk of getting spoiled for a show that's either off the air now, like the whole thing's done when you want to binge it. I just feel like you don't get to shut me down because I'm being the responsible one watching the show when it comes out. I'm just saying, I'm still bitter.
I want to watch Green Acres, but you can't tell me what happens. like,
Do they move back to the city? That's all I want to know.
but so this show is just, I mean, I know Kathy and Burk talked about episodes 1 and 2 in an earlier show, so you can check that out. So we can kind of start with episode 3, which is a standalone, amazing story about this love affair between these two men played by Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett, and just the world that they create and how they've sort of, Nick Offerman's character makes this wonderful Bill makes this wonderful world where he has this incredible house and it's safe and he's got a garden and he's cooking amazing meals.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, oh my God, if I was living in a post-apocalyptic world, I want to be this guy.
You got to be that guy then. You got to be the prepper. You got to be the guy who has the safe house and all the
and of course
hoarding
he is the prepper guy. He's like the bunker baby that's terrified.
Yeah.
He's
right.
Before. I mean, he had all this going on before the
Yeah.
pandemic, before the mushroom people attacked. He was down in his basement talking about the government being Nazis and all that.
Right. He's that guy. And you know that's what's so ironic about it, because he is a gay man, but he was closeted before this happened. Like he'd never been with a man before, because probably a lot of the political views that put him in his basement, preparing for the apocalypse, which was smart, but also driven by a certain
ideology,
worldview. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
So that's what was so great, is that something terrible like the apocalypse had to happen before he could actually discover who he really was.
Right.
He thought it was going to be the liberals, but it turns out to be the mushroom people.
That's right.
So,
right.
It was, I mean, and the fact that he actually gets to be his actual self now that he's not surrounded by that sort of bubble of whatever news sources he was listening to. Now that all that stuff is maybe fading out from his echo chamber, he was sort of like, this is who I am. Yeah. And when he finds his new friend in one of his traps, he
in a ditch,
like don't kill me, and it just develops in a natural way. Like, you're suspicious of everyone. That's the other thing I like about this show, is there's that, that, again, as with a lot of post-apocalyptic shows that also have monsters, a lot of post-apocalyptic shows have zombies and monsters.
Yeah.
They also depict the worst threat being the other humans, and what happens to us when and when you get confronted with this idea that you don't have supplies anymore. You need medicine, you need food, you need a place to be safe, you need ammunition, and you need to get from point A to point B, and there's somebody's there wanting to take your stuff, and it's like that, and everything's starting to rot. That's one thing I like too, is that they point out very real concepts about gasoline and things like that. It's like gasoline starts losing its ignitability after a while, and it starts getting watery, and you have to, you're tearing up your engines. So cars aren't going to keep working forever unless you refine the petroleum products properly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And when you first meet Frank, he's in this trap, and you just don't know, what is this guy up to. And
I was edgy. I was kind of scared. Like, oh my God, he seems nice, but I'm sure the guy wanted companionship, but he was like, and you can't trust people, because we've all seen The Walking Dead. Every time you meet someone new, they're going to destroy whatever you have.
And there's a scene where he's taking a shower, and Bill is outside going like, you okay? And he goes, just a few more minutes. You go, what is he doing in the bathroom? Is he not? Is he setting something up?
Yeah.
So that whole scene and that first meal where he's just loving the meal, he's the right wine. He starts
and I was expecting him to jump across the table, I
thought a gun was going to come out. I thought
it was
I thought at the piano scene, I thought a gun was going to, I thought while he's playing the piano, I thought a gun was going to come in.
Right.
And the piano scene was a turning point. Like, first of all, this show, the episode was called Long, Long Time.
Right.
And a showstopper, number one, it just stops you dead in your tracks. It's so amazing and great, and just not what you're expecting at all. You get this whole different viewpoint that you didn't have. That whole turning point there, the piano was so beautiful. Like, I love that they had him playing the piano really, the
clunky and
on it. He's like, no, stop. So I love that, Bill gets down, he sings that Linda Ronstadt song, Long, Long Time. And it was so, gives me goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah.
I've had had that song in my head ever since. Like it
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
is so
it's a beautiful
poignant.
song.
And
Yeah.
I love that the show showrunner said he talked to a friend of his who does a lot of music curation and playlists for like all these companies and Spotify and all that. He tried to explain the story, like he couldn't figure out what song it should be. Like they're trying to figure out the song, and he goes, "What should I use in the scene? This is what's happening, the dynamic. This is where they cross over, and it's nostalgic, and it's a blossoming of love and acceptance." And he goes, "Long, long time, Linda Ronstadt." It was like instant. He go, okay. So I love that was the song instantly off the top of this guy's head, and it was so perfect.
And
It's
there's
so
the great
perfect.
the great dialogue of Frank saying there's something like, when's the last time you played this for a girl or something like, and he goes, I never
Right.
did, and he
Who's
goes,
the
I
girl?
know. Yeah, who's the
Yeah.
girl? He goes,
Yeah.
I know. And that was like, such a great bit of dialogue.
And
I
I love
loved
that
it.
they're these older guys, and they're not like, it could have been so easy, when you have a relationship, the way the media depicts of these young hot dudes, but I
Right.
love that they're just these grizzled older guys, and they're very mature men, and the one is more experienced and he's accepting, and the other one's new, he doesn't know what to do, he's been closeted his whole life. Such a great, beautiful depiction of this love happening in the middle of this terrible apocalypse that ended up being probably the best thing could happen for them. It was just so like, oh my God, it was so
Everything about it was very touching.
Mm.
I mean, the
Yeah.
scene where they're eating the strawberries, that was just so
Yeah.
like, that was probably the best thing they ever ate.
I
Just
love that
straw-
scene. It was so sweet. And then the
Yeah, it
game,
was.
Bill was the person you went to get stuff from. Like he was the hub.
Yeah.
Like I need this, because he has everything. He has,
Yeah.
his
He
stuff
knew where to
neighborhood.
get it
He
and all that.
compiled everything. Yeah. So he was very, he went and turned on power to his house because he knew how to go into the power plant and make all that shit happen. So
Right.
I love that. And so he was our main guy in the game that we could depend on. So it was really cool to see him in this, get his backstory. But at the same time, I was like, no, like, of course, we see how it ends. It's 20 years later, and
Yeah.
they're both older men, but you don't get to see him again. And in the game, you had him through the game. And I'm kind of sad we don't get to see him through the whole story, them keep coming back to visit him. And I
Yeah.
want to see Offerman again. But that
Yeah,
last
what
shot in the episode, oh my God, so
the
haunting.
last
so
little
beautiful.
montage of memories,
even-
it shows
even
the
just-
whole
Just the window with the curtains
in the
kind
window.
of
Yeah.
fluttering. And they didn't show them.
was
You knew they were in the
very-
bedroom.
Yeah.
And very emotional.
So-
It was very like this standalone, beautiful movie, love story.
Yeah.
And you didn't need the infected. You didn't, there was some, there was an attack, but they were easily
the
taken
Raiders.
care of. The Raiders.
Yeah.
It was just about them and their love story and how Joel.
And you do get a bit of the other two when Bella
Yeah.
goes down into the basement and she kills the one infected. And
Mhm.
but what is it about Nick Offerman? He's like so likable, and everybody seems to like him, even when he plays these slightly questionable characters that you
Like
maybe
Parks and Rec.
Or that miniseries, was it called Des? What was the one that he was the
Yes, Devs. Yeah.
Devs. He was great in that too, as a sort of
Yeah, kind of a Elon
mercurial,
Musk
kind of character.
He's just got this thing, and I met him and got to chat with him for a while, and he is a likable person in real life. He's like he's like that, you get what you get with that guy. And I sat there and had a chat with him, and I felt like, wow, this is a cool guy. He's like one of those people you just like him,
He's just great. He just seems authentic.
Yeah.
And he seems kind of not Hollywood. Like he just seems
Right.
like he's this great actor who isn't pulled into this shit, like
Yeah.
he's this authentic dude. And when he looked at the script, they sent him the script. Apparently someone else was cast and they couldn't do it. So they sent it to him and his wife, who's also an actress, Mega Mulaney, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was also in Parks and Rec as his ex-wife, who was the demon. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
She told him, "You have to take this. It's a done deal. See you later. Pack your bags. Just do it." And I feel like right now we've just seen the Emmy-winning, award-winning episode that's going to take all the awards next year. It's done. People don't even try.
I agree.
Over.
Yeah.
I agree.
This is television that just stands alone and pops out at everyone, and then they go, this episode. And it's funny, people aren't watching. It goes, why is everyone talking about Last of Us these days? I'm like, you just got to watch it.
Yeah.
And what's great
episode 3 and you'll know what we're talking about.
And then what's great about the series is because that was then episode 4, and Ellie and Joel are in that just briefly. It's not really their story.
Yeah.
They sort of pick it up, and episode 4 is a completely different vibe. It's like much shorter. That one's like almost like an hour and 20 minutes. This one's like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's it's just about them trying to get through Kansas City because they're just, they got in the car, the truck, and they're going on the interstate, but the tunnel to get through the city is blocked. So you can tell Jill goes, I guess I have to go through the city. And what happens because they can't get the on-ramp, they can't get back on the freeway.
They got lost in the city.
So they're stuck in the city, and then
They're blocked.
something completely different happens. You meet other characters. You meet, Kathleen, played by Melanie Linsky. I like her in everything.
Yeah, she's
And
great.
she's great in this as this sort of leader that just has
Unexpected.
this, and he gets in all this trouble, and it's a different kind of episode, but it's intense. It's really well shot. It looks like Kansas City is a post-apocalyptic. It looks really real. It's I don't know how they did that, but it looked good. So
I was
that's
sad
one
to
thing I
see
like about
Bill's truck get wrecked, though.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One thing I like about the series too is, unlike a lot of other post-apocalyptic shows that may not have had the budget or the technical trickery available to them to be able to pull off something like this, but you don't I'm talking about Walking Dead, but you don't get that sense of the size of the world, the size of the country. In Walking Dead, I always felt like, God, they're still in that pine forest, they're still in that same
They can't get out of
forest.
Gainesville, Georgia. Like
They
It's
went to the
all Georgia.
farmhouse.
Yeah, but it's like down the street from the prison that they were in.
And then they went to that other city. Oh yeah, that was
which
also
is right
the other
next
city.
door to the house.
And then that
that
other
they were
city.
in.
Oh yeah, that was also there. They didn't get very
But
far.
it just all looks like Georgia to me, like suburbs of Georgia, outskirts. And with this one, with The Last of Us, you really get the sense of driving distances between these towns and freeway, like the overgrown freeway, and you get these beautiful drone shots following their car as they're zooming along these overgrown roads that have been abandoned for 20 years. And the road, the gas stations and the buildings, and you see the buildings in the distance, like how nature would reclaim everything so quickly in 20 years.
Yeah.
And when they come to Kansas City, it's like you see these things that you don't really see too much in a lot of post-apocalyptic. I mean, going as far back as things like Logan's Run, where you see the vines growing on the buildings, but in this one you see the kind of the dirt, like the dirt and the grime and the kind of moisture and the moldy mold. Whatever the set dressers are doing, I don't know what if they're going through hand stippling stuff with a brush or whatever, but the set dressing is beautiful, and the way they've made the vines of the tendrils of the
cordyceps.
the cordyceps. Yeah. I have a feeling they're using spray foam or something like that and then painting it really nicely because they have to do so much of it. There's like whole walls and floors that are covered with this effect that they've come up with. And just the
really
scope,
cool.
I think what it is, the scope of it, it's so much bigger than a lot of other apocalyptic things.
And this is one weird little thing, but I just, I like to see if they got it right with the cars, because the cars really shouldn't be any newer than 2003 cars.
Right.
They shouldn't be 2010s or anything that looks.
Right.
So I'm watching the cars going, yeah, that's from the 90s, or that's an older car. So they actually, with the cars, they actually got that right. And sometimes, a lot of times you don't see that. You say, oh God, that's a recent car. Can't be a recent car.
And almost all of this is practical. Like that's what I like too, is like and this is something they take from the game. Like it's like the people just have these, there's big heads. Like they're just like people, these big fungus heads, and almost comical. And you don't need more than that, because even in the game, they were kind of awkward. They don't look like they're going to be scary until they fucking jump your ass, and then they're really scary. So I like that they're not trying to amp them up to be scarier with CGI. Like everything's practical, like including as we're going to talk about episode 5, they have this incredible, huge,
bloater.
The bloater that is big. Because I kept saying, when are they going to bring in the big scary one? Because they're the ones that you're always afraid of when you're in the game, because they were impossible to beat. And I got my head torn off like 50,000 times by these things. But it's like, I love that even that is practical. It's a costume, a guy, and they did all this makeup. Easily could have said, yeah, let's just do CGI, but they didn't. They're keeping it all really down to earth and gritty, which I think gives it this really lived in, it's really tactical and you can feel it and it can get you versus that you're separated by the animation and the not animation. I just think
Yeah.
that's really well done.
Agreed.
There is
Agreed.
something visceral, and
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not one of those people that condemn CGI. I think if it's
Yeah, I'm
done
fine with it.
right, it's beautiful and it can be just as artistic and just
Yeah.
as creative and crafted. But there is something visceral about a real thing on a real set, and there's a scene in the most recent episode that you were talking about
Yeah.
where things are crawling out, and there's a big thing that comes out that we'll get to in a minute that I felt was real. I didn't feel
Yeah.
like these were CGI I Am Legend kind of zombies coming up
Right.
out of the
No.
ground.
Yeah.
It was scary because of that to
Yep.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was fearful for Ellie and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam and Harry, who are
Yeah.
we see at the very end of episode 4, but it's really their story, episode
Yeah.
5, and that's who Kathleen is going after because
Right.
Harry, killed her brother to save Sam, who had
Indirectly killed him. Turned him
Yes.
into the
Ratted
the
on him.
ratted
Yeah.
on. Right.
Yeah.
So
And Kathleen is gunning
that
for
whole
him
thing.
because she feels that he's responsible for the death of
He's a
her
traitor.
brother.
He's a
Right.
collaborator, as
He's
he
a
calls it.
collaborator,
Yeah.
a
It's the
rat,
worst
whatever.
thing you can be. Like
Right.
worst thing.
And the interesting thing is he did, and he admits it. He in part of the episode he sits there and he says, "Am I a good guy or a bad guy? Here's my story." And you're
Yeah.
like, that was pretty shitty, but
Yeah.
when you're pushed to you're pushed to save your little brother, it's like, would you do it? I think you
It's-
would,
Right.
And this is the thing that Last of Us is doing really well too. They're introducing new characters that you form this bond with. So
I
then
know.
you're feeling the risk and the stakes that this is not a can you imagine having a child in the middle of this shit? Like first
I
of all,
know.
having to deal with having a child and then having to keep it safe and your distraction of trying to do
Yeah.
things.
And Sam is
also-
deaf.
And a kid with
So
a
that makes it
disability
worse.
And Sam is
too.
deaf, which makes it cool.
And he
but
can't hear the threat. He
can't hear it.
I mean, think about how if you ever tried to sleep with ear push, like the things you push into your ears, the earplugs, whatever, on an airplane or whatever, and there's a weird little sense of stress for me
Yeah.
because I can't hear and I
I hear
don't
the
want
danger.
anybody to sneak up on me or something. But imagine if you were deaf in
Yeah.
a world like that, and you really need somebody to take care of you, to kind of listen and hear for you, because you can't hear if there's something out on the other side of the door.
And it was
So
really
that was
well.
a tension in the episode that was really well played.
Lamar Johnson and Kevon Woodward were the two
They're
actors.
really good.
And
Yeah.
so both of them were like,
Yeah.
you really felt for Lamar Johnson's character, the dad.
Yeah.
And then, Kevon couldn't be cuter. He was
I
just,
know.
he was taking it in stride. And I love how he painted over the red over his
Yeah.
eyes. You think he's like, kind of crazy paint when you first see him in episode 4 and you find out he's this love
Super
superhero.
Sam. Yeah.
So that
And
was
it's-
adorable. And you just really care about them. And when they hook up and then Joel, who's, I love where she said, he's whenever he talks to me, oh, that's just his
Yeah.
asshole voice. That's just how he talks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That he's kind of warming up to him because he's like, nope, we're calling it. You guys, we're just going to call this a win that we all survived and we're going to go our separate ways. But then as he
Right.
kind of warms up to him, he's like, maybe we should hang out together. Maybe it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
nice
love how
and also
the suspiciousness of him, the melting of him was so well done by Pedro Pascal because when he's like tells him, have you killed him? He goes, no. And then he goes, well, I didn't really tell you the truth about that. And because at that point, Pedro Pascal's like, I can see why you would do what you need to do for your child. He goes, well, let me tell you
He's
what I
thinking
did.
about what he did for his daughter.
Right.
exactly.
So he's kind of like, what did
He's
you
like,
do?
I get it.
And then
Yeah,
you
he
kind of
get
see him going, yeah, okay, it kind of makes sense. And
also-
that's some great acting too. Because the thing about Joel in the games too is he's super like gruff. It's almost
Yeah.
like he would be Nick Offerman in a way, but he's super gruff
Right.
and not very affectionate or not very friendly. But that's what you love about him because he's very authentic and he's not lying. He's not lying to you. He's just being safe and he's protecting himself emotionally because he's suffered a lot of loss.
And also the relationship between Ellie and Sam was very sweet. And I think Joel
Yeah.
said, oh, it's nice to see them being kids, in this
Yeah.
horrible world. They get to play a little bit and play soccer or whatever they're doing, that was very sweet. And so he kind of said, that's a plus for us, So they finally get out, they go through the plan and they get out to this northwestern, whatever, suburban neighborhood. And they think
Yeah.
they're in the clear. Of course, I'm always saying, everybody keep it down. You know, the kids are
I know
always,
everybody's all
Yeah.
like,
Ellie's always talking loudly,
She's always
like,
blabbing.
"Cool."
these things react to noise, remember?
Yeah. And then they get shot at by
And
this
again, it's
house.
not even the fungal, zombie things. It's
No.
people. Always people.
Somebody's shooting from a house far away, so that's dangerous. So Joel goes and gets to the house and sort of sees that it's an old timer who's got a rifle.
Also, just that tiny moment of like emotional moment that you're like, I shouldn't care about this guy, but I kind of did. You can see him, and then you realize he's not really that pitiful after you find out that he's actually turned him in.
Right.
Right. Well, he's got the
Like
he's
he's just
part of it.
protecting his house.
one of the
but he wasn't.
watch.
He's a lookout. Yeah.
Right. He's got
Neighborhood
the
watch.
walkie-talkie. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. And then and that was really cool. Like seconds later, they're coming down the street. It's like it was immediate. It wasn't like they're 5 minutes away. It was like
I love
it's
too,
They
though.
have vehicles. They're not on foot, you know.
Oh, they
Right.
could just get there in a second. I love too
Yeah.
where Joel gets in there, he finds the shooter, sees it's this old guy with a rifle, and he turns around, he goes, "Put the gun down." And the
Yeah,
guy's like,
please.
he goes, "Please, don't do
Please.
this.
Yeah.
Please put the gun down. Please, just please don't make me kill you, please." God, of course the guy doesn't.
Right.
But yeah, so then all of a sudden, all fucking hell, here comes the cavalry.
Right.
She comes in, storming in with her huge trucks, and that was so well shot. My God, the action in this is movie
Beautifully.
quality shit. It feels
yeah.
chaotic. It feels immediate, and again,
It
because I
feels
think everything's
overwhelming. Like,
in the
how the
scene.
hell are you going to get out
Oh
of
my
this?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you see all the wreckage, and then they finally shoot the guy, and the truck rams into a house, and here comes the rebel leader, and she's all like, "I finally got you," and he turns himself in, and you're like, "Here it is," and then you start hearing this weird noise.
I know.
You see
Like,
the
what is
truck.
that?
You see the
It starts
truck starting
sinking.
to sink.
Like a sinkhole or something, like, and you can see everyone going, "Oh fuck," because they know what this means. Like you saw the little tiny bit when they showed the basement in their building kind
Yeah.
of crack.
The other episode
know-
where you saw the floor moving.
The ground is unstable because now all the fungus is under there. So they're like, we
Yeah.
gotta get out of here. So now when they saw that, they're like, and we're all like, what does this mean? And
Yeah.
then, oh my God, it was so well shot. It gives me just chills thinking about
It
it.
was a
They
great,
come
beautifully
barreling out of this
directed.
hole like roaches coming out. Oh my God, it was so freaky.
That was one of the best zombie attack things I've ever seen in a film.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
like
I
because
so
it was so deadly and scary. And like I was saying before, I really did not get the feeling that these were CGI creatures
They were
attacking
not.
humans. These were threatening, fast-moving, horrible-looking, infected monsters.
Mhm.
And I felt like, it's hard to separate working as I do on films.
Yeah.
And I've been on sets where we've done things like that. I know what it smells like with the smoke and all the stuff on a set. I've spent overnights many, many times working nights on exteriors like that. And I've invited my friends to some of the sets too. You guys have been with me on some sets like that. And so when you see scenes like this, having worked in films for many, many years, I see scenes like this. Sometimes I feel like, okay, I kind of feel the set dressing and the artifice of it. But with this, I don't know what they're doing on this show, but they're doing I think it's magical. I think they're set dressers and they're production designers and their staging and the way they stage these scenes.
Yeah.
I think they're doing a really good job of putting you in a real place, like making you feel like this is a real thing that's happening. It's a lot to do with the writing, but it's a lot to do with the sort of like the word you used, chaotic.
Mhm.
Sometimes things seem a little bit too blocked out and a little bit too stagey. Like we're moving from here to here. We blocked it so the people come over here. But there's a lot of chaos in this that I see. And like when the truck crashes, it goes somewhere you don't expect. And then when the people show up, there's cars. When the truck blows up, Ellie gets close to the explosion and you're feeling like, what the hell? And he picks her up and she's disoriented. It's like she really was close to a real explosion. And the chaos of that and the terror of it, you really feel like you're in it as opposed to somebody just leaping out of the way of an explosion.
The perfect
She got knocked
timing
down.
of one person at a time attacking you, or
No,
Right.
and like you show her
you're
tumbling
swinging
and
over their
kind of
heads.
crawling around, and there's people everywhere, and there's this like, you just feel like she's right next to that big bulldozer looking thing, and she's trying to get into that
and she's
car, and
turning
these things
around trying to
grabbing.
shoot behind her, and it's just
So
like
terrifying.
it was so well done. It was so well staged, and
Yeah.
I felt like I was like on the edge of my seat with
I
that.
think the
It was.
direction really helped us because you had Joel from this vantage point. So they would cut to
Yeah.
him with the
Yeah.
gun. And then you had that view of like, you kind of see, okay, that's where Ellie is. That's where
Yeah.
Sam and Harry are. That's
Yeah.
where all that stuff is going on. So then when you cut back to like you're on the ground, you sort of have an idea where everybody is. You have a feeling
Right.
for it. So a lot of
You're
times that
in
stuff
it
is
with them too.
Yeah,
You
so
don't
you-
feel like an observer. Like the camera's low on the ground when she's on the ground. You
Yeah.
feel like you're trying to climb into her car, and you're down there with him. You're not just like standing up, eye level, looking down at like a
Right.
camera. You feel like you're a person in the scene with them. Just so
Yeah.
scary.
And my biggest thing is when there's action scenes like that, I want to know where everybody is in
Yes.
some
So
way.
hard to do.
Otherwise, it's just a bunch of running around and I don't
Yeah.
care. But this was beautifully choreographed and
And
directed.
there's like 40
Um,
people in there, and then all of a sudden there's 100 people in there, or people and things.
They're everywhere. And
Yeah.
I love too where she sees the car. She knows she can get in the car and be safe. So she crawls through that window, just barely getting through this little
Yeah.
window. So she's in there. She climbs the front seat. She's just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So she's hiding in there. And then a little child, the cutest blonde girl with the big fungal head comes
Yeah.
crawling through the window. And she's totally like, I guess the actress is actually like this 9-year-old contortionist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She comes in and she does this weird flip. Like she becomes this different kind of
She's
being. And
whirling,
again,
yeah.
practical, and it made it so much scarier because it's a real person doing that. And so she's all click,
Yes.
click, 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 oh my God, so scary. And so Ellie
It
now
was
is like,
terrifying in that
car now.
van. Like,
Yeah.
where do you go now? You got this thing in the van with you, and they're also outside the
Oh,
van.
oh, Jesus Christ,
And
it was so
you really,
crazy.
I think one of the things you see is the character development in this, and you saw Ellie in the early scenes and early episodes being really sort of cocky, and she wants a gun, and she's like kind of thinks she's got it, covered. Typical young person, I think everything's cool, I can handle it. And then she gets into these situations, and I think Bella Ramsey is a really good young
So good.
actress.
Yeah.
She's not
really
just
good.
she's not just doing what the director's telling her to do as far as like, okay, be scared. And she's like,
Yeah.
she's actually an actress, and that's a difficult thing for kids. She's not really a kid. She's, I think, a little older than she plays.
Yeah,
She's
she
definitely
is.
older.
Yeah.
Still, she's a young person without a whole lot of experience, but she's reacting to these things as though she has been through these blindingly
it.
awful experiences. But
Yeah.
that these kind of things, her face is like, what am I seeing? What's happening? And it's
Like
just
she's
the
like
terror.
tough. She's like, this is more than I can handle. Like you see her kind of going, this is not. I thought I
Right.
was tough, but this is not what I want. And I love too
And
when the Sam is asking her like, you never seem like you're afraid. Like he writes it. She goes, I'm afraid
Yeah.
all the time. Like, and I
Yeah.
thought, and she said, I'm mostly afraid of being alone. Like, and that would be the scary part. Like if Joel got killed, what's Ellie gonna do? Like,
Right.
try to
So I
go
think
back
Right.
to the
she likes having
where
2 extra people as sort of insurance.
Sure.
And you see them, they're under the car, and those things are trying to get him under the car, Sam and his dad, and you're like, oh my God, they're gonna get him. And of course, somehow miraculously they get away.
But that performance, the level of the casting is incredible in the show. Every even not regular character, but episode specific characters,
Yes,
or
so
2 or
funny.
3 episode specific characters. Casting is so good. That's what makes you buy it. You totally buy. I'm struck again by Bella Ramsey's performance that really pulls you, because you want to be that person. You want to be cocky and not scared, and to find out that she's scared. And then you see this whole there's a again, this is a major spoiler. Are we ready to delve into
Are we talking about the post-disaster moment where they finally get away?
Yeah, because they get away, and we see the bloater who takes care of
Oh
Kathleen.
yeah, let's talk about the bloater for a
So the
second.
bloater
Yeah.
comes out, and he's just this incredible character, just like
Huge.
twice the size, just big.
Hadn't seen
dude.
it before.
Yeah, and he comes out and he goes up to the bearded. I forgot the bearded guy, like a Kathleen's
Yeah.
Sidekick.
Yeah, he just does one of those classic, rips his head off.
I love that was just
And-
sort of in the
A
background. Like you
Goya
had this
painting.
action where they're getting away, but in the background, the
Right.
bloater's taking the side characters going done. But I love they didn't linger on that. It was just there was so much chaos. Everyone is so disposable in this world that guy
Right.
getting his head torn off is just fucking background now. It's like
Right.
background noise. There's another person died because of the bloater got out of the earth, which they helped happen. They were
Right.
perfectly fine underneath. It's
Yeah.
like, my God.
And I love that they don't, like you said, they don't linger on the violence in this show. They don't show you things. And I like that. I mean, I'm it's not because I'm like, oh my goodness, violence. No, it's because sometimes it's more effective, more powerful. Like in episode 3, where they didn't show, I mean, a lot of shows would have showed the 2 dead mummy bodies in the bed,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
they would have shown them dying or,
Yep.
whatever. But they leave that for you to imagine. And in this one, some of the violence happens in the background.
Yeah.
And some of it happens with the sound. You hear the shot, like with the guy upstairs that Joel goes up and finds him. He says, please, no, please don't. You see the guy start to turn, and then you cut away and you hear the gunshot. I think it's more impactful to not see it. And also in the other episode where Joel shoots the guy who's saying, no, mom, mommy, that was so heartbreaking.
God, that was so
I don't
bad.
need to see his head splatter behind him like you
Right.
would see in some other shows. Just you see Bella Ramsey's face and you hear the gunshot. You see it register in her and what's happening. And I think that's so much more powerful. And they did that a couple of times in this episode. We don't need to see the bullet hole or the,
Anything. Kathleen's death, the same sort of thing. Like it's not like it's.
They just kind of pile on her and they're done.
It's over. Yeah,
and that was the main character you wanted to see get taken out because but then again they did humanize her again. They'd make it less complicated because technically we're on some of the rebels side. I mean, we're not against the rebels. So the fact that she's on this revenge mission that she says even her brother, who's the one that was killed, would be going, do not do this, but she's doing it anyway. And that anytime someone's that driven to do something like this, it's not going to end well. So you're expecting the bad guy, the big bad guy, because she did kill innocent people for no reason except they wouldn't tell her where this guy was. You expect this big moment, but again, they kind of it was sort of in a way so much chaos, so much disposable humanity. Like, gone, another one gone.
Right.
So
and I think she was it the same little girl that kills her that tried to kill Ellie?
It was
pile on of all. I think
but I think it might have been, but I couldn't really
started
tell.
it, but then they all.
I recognized the little striped shirt that she's wearing, and it looked like maybe the same little girl that was in the car. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, that was great.
But then
they tried to follow Ellie.
Maybe. But then we get away from that.
Get out of that.
They get out of that, and they're at this old beat up motel, and they're just trying to sort of regroup and figure out what to do next.
Yeah, and that's where you have a little cute moment with Ellie and Sam, talking about what it's like. And also, one thing you were talking about how Ellie is always being so loud and everybody's just talking and being in a way it's like for a second she's being a kid. Like, I have nothing to worry about. I'm just being a kid. You sort of forget that she's a kid.
Right.
Well, they like the same comic books, and she's like relatable.
So
he's younger than her, but she's got somebody to play with and to hang with.
Cute them together. So anyway, so they're in the hotel room, and I noticed too when they showed Henry, the dad, and he just looked ragged, and I thought that was cool. They all looked like their minds were blown after that. They were like, holy shit. And once again, humans are actually the worst thing in this thing, but I'm kind of getting suspicious. Like, he looks way too wasted. What's going on here? Like, I get worried anytime someone's in a big fight. What's going on? So I was worried about him because he looked sick, and I was getting worried. But it was a misdirect, wasn't it?
It was, because Sam finally shows Ellie that he was bitten on his leg, lower leg.
But first, before that, he says that he asked her about being scared, and you're wondering, he's saying, do you ever get scared? And you realize when he finally does reveal that, you realize why he was asking her that. He was scared because he didn't know what to, not because of the zombies or whatever, the mushroom people that are attacking as much. He was scared to show his dad that he had been bitten.
Yeah. And also
And
he asked, like, "Do you think you're still in there when you become a monster? Like, do you
right,
think you're still in there?" And I love that too. And I would have gotten the hint at that point, but she was like, "Oh no."
right. I didn't
And
get
then
the hint.
I didn't
but
get
when
the hint either. By the
uh
way, just FYI, they're brothers. They're not dad and son.
That's right.
oh,
I
they're
keep
brothers.
thinking
Oh
dad
yeah.
and son,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's his
Be sure and
brother.
cut
Yeah.
anytime we say dad.
Yeah,
Right.
I
I
did
keep
double
saying that's
check.
right.
Yeah,
That's right. You're
Right.
right. I keep forgetting that because
It's his
there just seemed
brother.
like
Yeah.
the age that he would be a son.
right.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's his brother.
But anyway, so that was just so sad because like
Yeah.
okay, maybe her blood will somehow
Yeah. She's
cure
like, my
him.
blood is
Yeah.
medicine.
Yeah,
They don't
maybe
know
that'll
how it
work.
works. So
Right,
yeah, she
right.
cuts her hand, tries to put her blood on him. I mean, maybe I was thinking maybe her
What
antibodies will
else?
go in there. Why not?
What
We got
else?
nothing.
Why not?
But it
Yeah.
was
It's
stupid not to tell Joel and Henry. That was stupid
Right,
not to say anything because
right.
she
yeah.
was
I
afraid
agree.
to turn him in a way. Like, but
I
that
agree.
was she's done some careless things like that. So I feel
Right.
like that is a kid's thinking. And I think that's
Yeah,
accurate, even though I was frustrated. I'm like, she should tell him, but she's not that yet. She's not
she's
the
not.
tough, hardened, battle hardened, which you eventually get as you
Well,
play
she
the
was
game.
Right.
gonna
She's
stay
a lot more
awake.
badass. Yeah.
She was
And I'll stay
gonna
awake
stay
with you.
awake and watch him, but she
Never
said, "I
happens.
promise I'll stay awake." But then it cuts to her,
Yeah,
again
she goes,
The
sleeping.
next morning, and then
Yeah.
the scene of his back towards her,
and I was
and
like,
then like
oh no, it's that behind. Oh
and he
no, the back.
turns, and of course he's infected now, and then this really
I
horrifying
hated seeing.
ending, yeah,
Yeah.
where
And it was this big awkward fight where she's like, ah, and they're
Yeah.
running and he's chasing her. And I love that it wasn't like this big stupid like CGI thing. It was like it was super awkward and they're tumbling around and
Right.
Joel and Henry are like, what the fuck? Because they were like, what's happening? Like they don't know what's going on. And of course, Joel pulls out his gun instantly, and then Henry's like, no, doesn't want
Yeah.
to shoot Sam. Don't do it. And
that
then,
was
of course,
beautiful acting
you
by
oh my god, it
by
was so
Henry.
good.
His face, like what he was saying, that was so realistic. Like
So
Yeah.
good. Oh my
he kind
god.
of he shoots his brother, thinking, "I just have to do that." Then he goes, "What did I do?"
Yeah,
like
then
what
he's
did I,
like, then
what
he's
did I
looking at the
do?
blood, going, I can't take it back. I didn't just stop him, I killed him. Ugh.
Yeah, it was
What have I
they're
done?
very, very sad.
And then Joel's like, give me the gun, give me the gun. Like he knew, he could see it in his
Yeah.
eyes. He was like, please
Yeah.
give me the gun. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. Fuck. Because he really
Yeah.
wanted Henry. I think he also liked having the companionship that wasn't just
Yeah.
a kid.
Yeah, right.
Oh, it
right.
was so heartbreaking. And then the
But
inevitable.
very devastating ending. Yeah. You lose both
Yes.
of these
So hard.
characters, and
Right.
he shoots himself because
Yeah.
what else do you have now?
Nothing
It's
else.
like his whole existence was taking care of his brother. And there was the thing about where he's talking to Joel about, did you ever know somebody who was just a really good person and an excellent human being and a person that you look up to, the kind of person that you aspire to be? And that is how he described Kathleen's brother, the person who he betrayed. And you get also, there's a scene where Kathleen is in her childhood bedroom, and the guy, her bearded right-hand man comes in, and she talks about her brother being this wonderful, virtuous person, and about how he wouldn't, she last time she saw him, he said, forgive. And
Yep.
she says that she just can't, it's not that, I'm not that strong, And there's
I think that,
Yeah.
well, I was just
there's
going to say, I think there's in this show, the reason you live is for purpose. Like Henry is living for Sam. He kills Sam. His purpose is gone.
Yeah.
Bill,
Yeah.
the same thing with Frank. Bill
Yeah.
did not
Yep.
want,
Yeah.
Bill committed suicide because his purpose was keeping Frank alive. So I think if you're in that world, like if you don't have that purpose, like what is life worth living? You're going through all this hell,
Yep.
trying to stay alive every minute. It's like, ugh, it's not worth it unless I have somebody I care about. And I
and
think that's
Ellie
such
ends
a
up
core
writing to answer here to answer Sam's question about being afraid. She writes the thing that she's afraid of is not being killed by a mushroom or attacked by a zombie. She said she's afraid of being left alone. And
Yeah.
so at the end, with episode 3 with Bill and all, and with this one, you get that feeling of that is a component of life in this
Mhm.
world now.
Yep.
If you're alone, what's the point,
Right.
And
Exactly.
the name of the show is The Last of Us, and it's sort of
Yeah.
a theme through it where It's like the
Yeah.
only reason to stay alive in this world is for the benefit of others. And in our world, there's other people everywhere. So,
Yeah.
there's someone else that you can attach yourself to or whatever.
Yeah.
But in
And
this
even
world,
in the game, you're not even let off the hook either because you play both characters, either one of the characters could ultimately die. So you're very
right,
attached to them. So the
Wow.
fact you're playing both, you wonder like, when's the other shoe gonna drop? And I'm just gonna be one of the
right,
last of us, gonna be alone.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the tension of the game too, is like, which of my
Right.
characters that I have grown to love is gonna die?
Wow.
Shit.
It's
yeah,
it's I mean, the season is 9 episodes, so we're kind of at the halfway point, and we'll do
yeah,
another look at the end of
We'll
the,
do another
after
wrap up.
episode.
yeah,
But obviously, we all love this show, and
Mhm.
we think it's high quality television. I mean, and everything
yeah.
about it, acting, you said the set decoration, the effects, the direction, all of it is just, writing. It's first rate. And people, if you haven't seen it, obviously, you're missing a lot.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we've told you a lot.
One thing I want to say about it though is it is kind of a bummer show. It's not it is not a
Yeah.
feel good show. There's moments of clever character interplay.
Well, Joel
we
and Ellie are fun together. They're kind of fun and they banter, which is fun.
Yeah, and then the episode 3 where you got the
Yeah.
touching love story, which actually in some ways kind of had a uplifting ending.
It kind of did,
Um,
actually.
But
Yeah.
then there's a lot of things that happen in the show that are sort of like these almost unredeemably horrible things that happen. It's like you have to move on from something that is devastating to you. You're just finding a friend. I feel like Joel was like,
Yeah.
and I feel like Henry found a friend too, because Joel was saying, well, we're going here. And he goes, can we go with you? And
Yeah.
he says, if you want to go with us. And he's like, yes, we do want to go with you. And
Yeah.
it's good to have a friend, and you feel like, okay, this is going to be a little team that's going to go in and work together. And
They
Nope.
didn't make it.
Nope.
yeah.
And also
So it
by
is a
saying-
bit of a downer that, I mean,
Yes.
I after this episode, I felt a little depressed, I have to say.
Yeah, because you
And,
don't characters you like, or come
Yeah.
and go, and it's like, and it was one of those tragic deaths, like you were saying, the episode 3, that was kind of this beautiful love story ended in kind of a romantic, natural way. Technically, in this world, that was the best ending you could hope for. And then they
And you-
pulled the rug out from under us and had Des by 2 characters we care about in the worst way possible.
Right.
So
and you just
Right.
love
And
this little
love
boy,
them.
Sam.
Oh,
He's
he's
just
so
such a
good.
lovable little kid. He loves superheroes and comic books, and he loves to
Yeah.
draw, and
Yeah.
he has an imagination. And he's also very dependent, which is another tragic aspect to his character. If his older brother died, he would be in a huge mess because he can't hear. He can't hear anything coming, So he depends on his brother, and his brother knows that. And you find out at the end that his older brother also depended on him, for his purpose. Endure and survive is the name of the episode. And
Yep.
It's a
And I
great
love how
show.
they buried him, and Ellie's like,
Yeah.
off we go. I love last scene. She's just walking away. Like, this
Yeah.
is how
Which
we
way?
have to
Which
do it
way
now.
is west? Let's
Yep.
he left
Here
his
we go.
little tablet. He had
I'm
this little tablet that he
sorry.
would communicate with, and she
Well-
said, "I'm sorry," which is like,
So sad. Oh my
Yeah.
God. And then Joel's like looking at it like, yeah, it was really sad.
So yeah, not an uplifting one,
Powerful
but extremely well made, and hopefully, I don't know how this ends. Hopefully, maybe there's a
Yeah.
little uplift towards the end of the series.
Don't
I don't
count
know.
on it.
yeah, don't count on it. I'm not
Don't
I'm
count
not
on
counting
it.
on it.
Yeah,
Don't count on it.
Hope
But it's
springs
not-
eternal, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and I was wondering this too, like how much of Last of Us is going to get covered in this? Like, are we going to get halfway through the game? I mean, essentially, is it going to go off on its own? Like, I don't want it to just be done and done. Like,
Yeah.
you have part 2, which I think don't go to part 2 yet. Like, I want to stay in this world. I want to stay in because it took me months to do the game, right? Because I don't
Right.
like to finish games quickly. I like to be in the world. I don't want them to just give us the whole game and be done with it, and then we're like, well, now what? I want them to take
Yeah.
their time and end like maybe at a halfway point, and then
And also
have
to
a second season 2.
to riff on it a bit too. I mean, I haven't played the game, so I don't know, but I know a lot of internet babies are crying, it's different from the game in this aspect. It didn't do the same exact dialogue
they're
as
making
the
it
game. And
better. you don't want it to be
It's a
exactly the
TV show
same.
about based on the
Yeah,
He's
games.
you don't want
Like,
it to be the
you've
same.
got to adapt it to a different medium, and it's
Yeah.
not going to be the
right.
game. You play the game, then
If you
you
want the
watch the
game, play
movie.
the game.
Yeah,
I want to be
exactly.
surprised. Like I was
Yeah.
very pleasantly surprised we got more a Bill in this. Like it was cool to see his backstory. Like give me more of that. I'm
Some people
fine
are
with it.
whining about that too. I mean, not just for the obvious reasons that they can't handle anything that has
That's
anything to
gay.
do with gay folks, but
Yeah.
they also can't handle that it's different from it's ruining my childhood and all that. But
Again, the only
Yeah.
difference that bummed me out is I don't get to see Bill anymore. Like, and
right.
he was kind of my rock in the game. You get to see Bill a few times. You always go back to him. So it's kind of sad. I think they don't have that sort of anchor, but that's
That
okay.
yeah.
We'll find something else. And the trailer showed we're going to see some more action. So
But one thing I
Well,
wanted to say also is about the show. It's clever. It's well written. It also isn't. It doesn't. There's one thing about horror movies, horror based genre product that irritates us all. I'm going to speak for Mark and Kathy. We don't like to watch horror movies that have stupid people in them or stupid things happening where you're
There's a
going, oh,
lot.
come on.
Yeah.
It's like these people are relatively smart. I mean, they're as smart as I'd be, in a situation. The idea of the tunnel that goes under the freeways that they're patrolling and that whole thing. Also, the writers of the show, I don't want them to write stupid things into the show.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of times where I've seen something in the show and I'm like, but then I think about it and I'm like, oh, and it does make sense. Like there was one, speaking of set dressing and production design, the scene where we find Kathleen in her childhood bedroom.
mhm.
I thought, wait a minute, how come her childhood bedroom still looks like her childhood? And I thought that was a little bit contrived, a little bit too like on the nose. Did her mom keep her room like that? But then I thought about it. Oh, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
she was still young.
Right.
So apparently her family split that house and left her childhood bedroom as it was. So in a way, a lot of things are frozen in time 20 years
Right.
ago.
Right.
And that was a poignant thing. They didn't really hammer that into you in the show. But because a lot of people might see it and say, well, certainly the people who lived in that house after her or people that, as she grew up, wasn't she also a teenager in that room? It still looks like a kid's room. But then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. And there's like another level of sort of poignancy to the thing. And she asks her guy, don't you ever go back to your childhood bedroom? And that would be a thing.
Yeah.
There would still be these places that were preserved as they were 20 years ago. So you would actually be able to go back and visit things sort of as they were. They would be rotten and fallen apart and dirty and overgrown now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a poignant thing that they brought into the show without making too huge of an issue of it.
Well, and you also got the impression, I mean, I got the impression the family died from this and that they lived in the house and they died. And then they also implied that she just stayed in her hometown where her bedroom was because the doctor talked about he helped her mother bring her into the world, right?
Right.
So she's staying in her hometown. She didn't go anywhere. The other guy's like, my bedroom's 200 miles away. Like she just stayed.
Right.
But how old is she? How old is that actress? And when you think, how old would she be 20 years ago when this all happened?
Yeah.
She would have been.
I think she's. I think she's like her. She's probably in her 30s or something like that is my guess. But it kind of makes sense. You sort of get your growth in this world is different than if you're growing up in a normal world. There could be some sort of retardation of that, of like you're not as mature as you're supposed to be because you're living in this other crazy world. So it's just
the comic books and the magazines are all from 20 years ago or more.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very, I think they really got it. Yes. It's a great show.
They nailed it. And I think this shows you can make a good show or a movie out of a video game if the video game is also good.
Yes.
That's it.
And concentrate on characters.
And if you allow the writers of the show some air as far as where they go with the story, because if it was just a straight retelling, I mean, there was a lot of talk about how they matched the prop of the porn magazine exactly like the one in the book, and she says later dude, and she says the same dialogue. It's cool, little Easter eggs like that are cool, but the idea of sticking exactly to it and doing a frame by frame replica of the game, it's like, why would you
Don't
want
need
that?
Don't need to. Nope, don't need it. All right.
All right,
But
everybody.
I'm really
Thanks.
impressed with it so far,
Me
even though
too.
it bums me out.
Yeah, it's really well done. Just put Pedro Pascal in everything. That pretty much will guarantee this.
He's already in everything.
He is in everything.
Yeah. He's
All
a great
right.
presence. All right, everybody. Thanks for checking
Bye.
us out and listening to our thoughts on The Last of Us.
We
Lots
could
of
go
thoughts.
on and on.
Yeah, we
Really.
could.
Seriously, it's already an hour. Okay.
Okay, everybody. Take care.